how to turn your information into a course, a training program, a seminar, a workshop. You have information, you want to deliver instruction. They are not the same. Information is not instruction. Information is essentially free. Most content that you have is going to be available in some other avenue, some other source. Somebody else is going to be able to provide that information. This is even more so the case in an age of AI, where information is generated based on whatever you're requesting that information to become. However, your value added, whether you have a Substack or a podcast or a YouTube channel, whatever it happens to be, you're providing information, but that's free, and you need to be able to monetize that. Now, you can monetize in a couple different ways. You can have truly unique insights, and that's something that you will indeed have, and that there is value in that. But most of the time, I would say 95% of the time, your content is indeed available somewhere else. And so what do? Well, you turn it into what I would call education. Education is an experience where you're building someone's skill set. You say, well, I gave them the information. Isn't that all they need? No, that is not all they need in any way, shape, or form. And so, and because it's available all over the place, if you really want to help your user, you have to help them develop a skill set, and that requires instruction. Okay? The nice thing about instruction, whether it is a training program, a seminar, a webinar, an online coaching session, you can attribute economic value to that and get economic value from doing that. Okay? Because having a skill set allows the person that you're working with to actually do things, and do things better, and do things in a way that can accomplish and move an organization forward. Without that ability, you're just having information, you're just stuck. And most of information comes in and it goes out. Even if you're exposed to super quality information, if you are just viewing it, whether it's on a TV program or through a YouTube video like this one, the retention is very, very small. We all know the data, for example, on a lecture, and this is essentially a lecture. There's ways to juice that up a little bit, but essentially this is a lecture. Our brains forget almost everything. You can also read material. Reading is so much better than just viewing if you're willing to spend the time, but it's really not all that great. Retention in reading isn't all that great either. Retention in action comes from actually being able to practice a skill, implement a skill, do a skill. These are all critical things. So how do you get from your information to a course? I'm going to give you one step in this video. One little thing that will launch you. Now, there's all kinds of things you can do and need to do to create a coursework. But if you can think of this one thing, this is going to help you immediately. First off, you're going to have to think about your topic and be very clear about what that topic is. Once you have that, you're going to have to create what's called a learning objective. Now, if you have an instructional design background, this is pretty standard kind of thing. Any teacher probably will be able to tell you these kinds of things, although increasingly not so much. You find an instructional designer, they'll certainly be able to tell you these kinds of things. Here are the three pieces of a learning objective: behavior, criteria, and conditions. Now here's the twist, and here's the twist I want you to pay careful attention to. Almost everybody thinking about learning objectives thinks about behavior. What to do. They know enough to say, my learner is supposed to be able to do X. And that's what this is about. By the way, well, I don't want to get sidetracked. So That is the one thing. There's two other pieces though. The two other pieces are criteria and conditions. And if you can focus as much effort on those things, in fact, more effort on the criteria and conditions, you'll have yourself a course. So what I'm saying from the very core is the reason I want you to engage in developing a learning objective. Obviously, it helps guide the whole process. You can't teach something unless you really kind of know what you're teaching. And some of your content is not going to be amenable to that, some is. And so you have to think things. I'm going to reframe my topic into learning objectives that have behavior, criteria, and conditions. Everybody ignores the criteria and conditions. Now, if you just focus on behavior, you're going to be a mile ahead of everybody else. What are you able to do? What are you supposed to be doing? It's not just, hey, I gave you an information. Maybe, it's like looking at the news and saying, oh, well, here's the sports score from this morning. What do I want you to do with that information? And if there's nothing to do with that information, cut it. It has no purpose. It has no purpose. It's not going to serve you. It's not going to serve your clients, your partners, your learners at all. So behavior is critical. Think overt behavior. Think of behavior that actually requires action. You can see it. You can feel it. You can observe it. The learner can observe it. You as a coach can observe it. It's critical to have that action. Work in the world is what we're looking for. That's a baseline. But the criteria and conditions are ignored, and I'm not exactly sure why this is the case. I think it's because so many people think that once they have the behavior down, then what's going to happen is that it'll automatically be translatable. They're doing something, and then I can leave it at that. Also, because I think these terms are misunderstood. Think of the conditions as the tools that someone has available. So, for example, if I want you to write a letter, that would be the behavior. But then what tools do I want you to use? Do I want you to use a paper and pencil? Do I want you to use an AI system? Do I want you to just use a word processor? Those elements are really, really important because they all change what your instruction is about, what your expectations are about. And the more narrow you make that, the more specific someone can follow your directions and become successful about whatever they're trying to do. So don't forget the conditions. You could almost think about what technologies are involved, or what are the environmental situation. Do I want you to be able to identify different types of deer, maybe does from bucks, out in the field? Well, what are the conditions? Are you in the woods? Are you in the open desert? Are you close? Are you far away? Are you, is it night? Or is it dusk? Or is it morning? Or is it midday? Those are the conditions you need to think about. Now, all the conditions might be important, but then that gives you more to work with as the course designer, as someone who's providing a course and making money from a course, because you can be very specific about what you want them to do. Instead of just telling them, oh, you need to be able to tell bucks from does, good luck. Now you can take them through that. You can say very specifically, I've got a whole lot going on here. I can help you understand what this skill is because I have options for you. I have different situations for you to look at. Even more important than conditions is criteria. Criteria is absolutely critical. And it leads, again, to very specific steps for you to work on. How do you know, for example, public speaking or any type of speaking, a pause is a critical piece of advice. And you can look at in fact, you can pause this video right now, go look on Google or Ask AI for tips on public speaking or conversation or executive presence. They will all say something about a pause. But what do you say about a pause? Is it just, hey, be sure to take a pause while you're talking? And then you move on. Okay, that is good advice. But is it the best advice? Because you haven't provided criteria. You haven't said, okay, how long does this pause need to be? Well, there are actually empirical studies about this. And you could look and say, okay, maybe after a comma or the equivalent of a comma in a conversation, you're going to have a 1-second pause. Maybe after the end of a sentence, you'll have a 2-second pause. Maybe at the beginning of a talk, you'll have a 3-second pause. Maybe the conditions, going back to conditions, change whether you're in a conversation with across a dinner table or you're on stage. Remember, on stage you have to be bigger, and so your movements and pauses need to be bigger. But that criteria, okay, I need 1 second here. Let me see, do you know what 1 second is? Do you know how it feels? Can you demonstrate that you have a conception of when to use that 1 second and how long 1 second? So the skill becomes not just implementing a pause, but understanding something about time itself and how you experience time and how one experiences time in different conditions of different anxiety. That is the core of your course. That is where you get in and you get them to do something. You've identified what you want them to do. You've given them the specifics so they can perform it, and then you give them feedback. They practice and feedback. So you've taken just information. Hey, here's an idea. I want you to pause when you're talking. It'll help reassure your audience. Your audience won't realize it's a pause. It'll feel very natural. Go forth and do great. You've taken that little bit and you've turned it into, okay, let's talk about pauses. Let's talk about the different times that we look at different pauses and how we feel about that. It's not just a random bit of information, a little bit of advice. It is something they can work on and you can work on with them. And that has monetary value every time. Makes a difference? Of course it makes a difference. It makes a difference. Let me throw this out there. 80% of everything everybody does is kind of average. So you can say, oh yeah, do some pauses. Oh yeah, I remember that and that was important. I think I'll do that. It's that extra 20%. It's that top 20% where it actually starts making a difference because you were doing it at a level that made a difference. I just had an HVAC system installed in my house. I'm sure they did a great job. I'm sure they give advice of keep the house clean as you're doing your work. So, wiping off your boots when you come into the house, laying down plastic, all that kind of stuff. That's the information side of that event. Because obviously no one wants to have a system put in and have a dirty house. But you break that down. What does a clean house look like? And then what do you do to make sure a clean house is looking at you? So it's like this chain of events. Well, if you just say, clean things up, and let's say a worker accidentally walks through the house with muddy boots, they say, oh yeah, they told me to clean things up, and they grab a rag and they wipe things up and off they go. But that's not the same criteria as in identifying, oh, a clean house is when you remove a stain that was created, or this is how you clean up dirt so it doesn't smear on the staircase. By the way, this did not happen to me. They left the house in perfect condition. That's not an issue at all. Just pointing out there is, once you dive deep, then you have a lot to work with, which means you have a lot to charge for, because those are where the real value of those skills are. If you just do it at the broad level, it's hard to see if you're actually adding any sort of real, true value add to that client, because it's not going to be noticeable from someone else. We always have to aim for that upper level of the skill level. So that gives you more to design work, but it also does something wonderful for you. It makes you come across as so much more the expert than you would before. You already had this expertise, but until you frame it as this is a criteria, these are the conditions, and this is what I'm going to build my practice and feedback and retention, all this around, you don't have a whole lot to work with. So I'm encouraging you, think about these simple principles about learning objectives. It will completely transform your business model as far as providing information. When you start thinking of, oh, I'm going to put together a course and all you're doing is putting additional information out there and maybe having a chat where people can ask questions, that really is the bare minimum, and it doesn't take you out of the information. You're not creating a course. You're simply repackaging your information in a different way. And that may be fine, but I'm telling you right here now, the real value and the real money is in instruction. And your very first step is to think about learning objectives in a way that no one else has told you to think about them. Behavior, conditions, criteria. Don't forget the conditions. Don't forget the criteria. That'll put you well above almost anybody doing coursework, whether in a formal education setting or doing something with an online course. Do that, and you'll completely transform your business.